everybody. Welcome to our business class today. As I've been telling you some time ago when we talked about the letter of intention, we also said that we'll be talking about the resume sometime in the future. Well, that future has come today, and we'll be talking about the resume today. You know what's the resume? It's the curriculum vitae that you send as candidate or as an application for a job, for a vacancy, which will summarize your entire information, from personal details to work experience to education and to other relevant information that you think should be sent to a potential employer for a certain vacancy. I will share my screen now, and we will start discussing this. In the meantime, and while we have the presentation and while we discuss about that, if you have any questions, just post them. That would be great. We will answer them after the live class. That it would be very, very useful for us, and it will be very great to be in contact and then to answer some of your questions if you do have any problems understanding what a resume is or how you might actually write some of the information or include some type of data. So we will start first. We'll start with the template. There are different types of templates. Your best choice would be the one that is most used in the country that you want to work in. You can definitely use a predefined template, which is one that you can download from various sources, and you can just populate it with your personal information, and then it would be very useful at the end because you just create the template and you don't have to actually do the format yourself, as in build the actual template or the actual document. That's mostly useful. Then if you already have a type of resume that already contains the information, you can just copy paste, but then you still have to make some adjustments according to the type of resume that you want to create. And of course, you would want to create the best resume ever, right? So there are also different types of templates according to if you are a student, for example, or if you are going for a vacancy, if you are in a managing position or not. So try to understand what type of template works best. On the European job market, let's say, we also have the Europass, and I'll show you two examples. On the left side, the one called Lily French, which is just an example, the person doesn't exist, is a type of professional resume, one that you can definitely use for any type of vacancy, any type of job position. You see that it's very concise. It's well spaced out. It has titles, very, very useful for that. But you see that the difference between the left side and the one on the right side is that the one on the right side includes very specific dates and periods of time. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Either way you choose to do it, it's fine, it's great, as long as the information is presented in a way that can be very, very easily read by someone else. Your template should not be, the information should not be clustered, it should not be very crowded, people should not spend time looking for information and looking for words, looking for your experience, looking for education, or where the information is all jumbled and you have no idea whether this is work experience or if this is just a skill mentioned. So pay very close attention to how you present the information in the certain template. But if you use a predefined template, that makes your job much easier. The one on the right side is a type of a type of resume that includes quite a lot of information, but you see it only has some professional experience. Now, I'm only showing you the professional experience just because this is the first page. And also because as you see contact details, professional experience, you would have the same type of title for the other two sections. The other two sections would be education, and then we would also have another one for skills. And we'll talk a little bit about each of these categories. You see, a photo is always welcome, but you have to pay attention to what type of photo you will select. Okay, try to use one that you look as professional as possible. Mind your makeup. If you're a woman, mind your hair. If you're both a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. Your hair should always look nice. You have to look very polished and very well put together. Of course, it will be a photo of just your face, not an entire body or torso, but because you have to be very easily recognized by people. Then you have your name. You also have the main or the latest job position, age, and marital status. Marital status is not always required. Your contact details should be at the beginning of the resume. You see, in both cases that's true, because they have to be very, very visible to someone looking at your resume. People should be able to find your contact details very, very fast. Then we have professional experience, where you would include the information from your different jobs. But I have to tell you that the professional experience should be very relevant to the type of vacancy that you apply for. Your professional experience and even your acknowledgement or your achievements or the type of job that you did in the past should be selected as the most relevant ones to the position that you want to apply for, because you have to enhance your employability, right? You have to show that you are competent and that you are skilled and that you can do this job. Therefore, you will choose the most relevant information. And in the right side template, we also have the time. You can see that the information is presented a little slightly different, but in the two examples. But if you put the time on the left column, let's say, then people can focus on time or not. But either way you do it, it's fine. It's just that the information has to be clearly spaced out and divided so that whoever reads your resume doesn't actually start looking through your resume. Now, the number of pages, ideally, you should have 1 page. Acceptable, 3 pages maximum. So that means that you would have to restrict the type of information and restrict the number of details of the number of information that you put into your resume. Because if you have several jobs to include, and let's say that they're pretty complex and that the type of activities and responsibilities and targets that you've worked with, they were actually pretty complex. But you cannot write an entire story for each of these jobs, because then your resume would be a little booklet. So you cannot present that, because nobody at an interview, no recruiter will start to read your life story or your professional story. So therefore you have to write very concise but complete information. So you have to restrict it in order to get to maximum 3 pages. We'll expand, we'll talk just a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, if we talk about the type of language that you will include, of course, it will be formal, not informal. And you will use short expressions or short sentences because you don't have the space to actually expand on the information that you choose. And we'll talk a little bit about vocabulary, and I also included an example. The vocabulary that you would choose, you would try to, first of all, not repeat words. Remember that when different videos and different lessons that we've talked, we've talked about not repeating vocabulary. That would be quite useful. Of course, if you have several jobs to include in your resume, it will be difficult to have different words all the time, but you should still struggle as much as possible, maybe not to repeat from one job to the following job, but maybe to I don't know, skip one or two and then use it a little bit later in the resume. So then try as much as possible to show the fact that you can also use the language, and there are plenty of possibilities to use. So look at the words that I've put here in blue. I say skilled, experienced, financial planner. If you say just financial planner, for example, which is the name of the position, that's fine. But then if you add an adjective as well, it enhances the idea that I have definitely experience, that I can definitely work as a financial planner, that I am a professional. Therefore, the use of adjectives would be very, very good when you try to enhance your ability, when you have to enhance yourself, basically, or promote yourself. Well, highly organized with excellent communication skills. Remember that communication skills are very important in any job that you do. Even if the job doesn't mean that you would interact with customers or you don't work in a team, for example, and it's more like autonomous or individual, communication skills are also important. So include those in your resume, because people do want to know that you are able to communicate, that you are able to talk to other people. As individual as your job may be, you still have to talk to other people. So you have to be able to communicate and be and know the language firsthand, and then have interpersonal skills. So accomplished in reporting and analyzing financial data. That's a very, very brief description of the type of job a financial planner would do, for example. So I would say that you would need a little bit more than that, but you have to, or you can also use specific language for your job or for your experience, because you would send this resume to someone in the same field and people would understand the type of language that you include. Let's look at the example. You see, we have one that is a little bit too vague, and then one that is a little bit more complex. And this is one for, the second one is one for an IT position, which is better at sending out the message that what you are looking for, so that for example, if someone company sees your resume not as an application to a vacancy, but maybe on different platforms where you can post your resume, therefore they know exactly if you are a fit into their company or on that position. So if we look at the example that is too vague, we see that there isn't information that is very specific to a certain type of position. Very much talks about what they are, what this person is, and the type of skills they have and the type of experience they have, which is great, but it's really general. On the other hand, the second example, you see that we have the type of graduation, the type of degree that they did. We have Also a little bit of description, personal description, motivated, adaptable, responsible, and then quite important, the type of position where they're looking for. An IT position to utilize professional technical skills. Okay, well, if you say professional technical skills developed through past work experiences in this field, therefore I tell you, or they tell the employer that they have worked in an IT position before and they have relevant skills. And also they talk about a strong drive to see things through to completion, which would be meeting deadlines. Of course, you can take vocabulary from the too vague part to the other, the complex or the most specific one, and you can use them either way. That's fine, as long as you provide the relevant information and specific information. When you talk about your professional experience, what I mean by the name of jobs being real is that sometimes it happens that you have a certain title, but then you do the work slightly different, let's say, than your title. And your resume should reflect the reality of what you do. So if you can, you would get the real job from your work contract, your labor contract. I've just put here a couple of examples, but you know very well what your job is and what your title, the title of your job is. So you should include that as well. You would write capital first letters. That's not really a requirement, but it's something just nice to have, not must to have. Then when you describe your duties, they have to be concise but complete, and try as much as possible to have maximum 3 of them. I've just put here 3 examples from someone working as a financial planner or on a finance position. But of course, if your position would be much more complex than these, you can include 4 of them, but you can also go below 3, so have only 1 or only 2. That would also restrict the space a little bit, and you would end up with a smaller resume page-wise, meaning the number of pages, because the shorter it is, the better it is. But the shorter it is doesn't mean that you will not include information from description of duties. You have to include, because people will have to understand what you did there. But you would focus on generalizing or putting together or centralizing the information that is very similar into one phrase or one expression or one sentence. Don't overexpand. Don't try to work on write too many words, and most importantly, choose the ones that are very, very relevant to the skills that you've mentioned in the summary. If you are competent or if you are a skilled financial planner, you would try to include this in description of duties, the type of activities that made you a skilled financial planner, or the ones that would relate very, very much to the summary or to the position that you are looking for. If you are, for example, looking for a career change and you are a financial planner looking for a position in human resources, then you would have to focus on communication, you would have to focus on interpersonal skills, focus a little bit on predictions as well, or drafting reports, because that would also be part of a human resources position, depending, of course, on the part of human resources that you want to focus on. But then offering support to financial manager might not be as relevant for a career change, right? But if that was a big part of your job as a financial planner, then you have to make a decision and see if it would be best to include it or not. I would say maybe not. If you're doing a career change, then that would not be the best description that you can choose. But for example, acting as point of contact for other departments or other divisions or units in the company, well, that would be very relevant for a human resources position, right? Because the human resources position is the point of contact for different problems in the company or for different aspects. So also when I mean that you have to choose the relevant information that to include, meaning that relevant for the position you are looking for, then you have to look at your job descriptions for each of your jobs, and then you have to select and understand how the responsibilities you've had relate to the responsibilities you will have. And you always have to compare the vacancy note with your job description and see how you can match them. And that would be great. Then how you organize the information. You always start with the professional experience, and you always use the most recent one to the oldest one. You will, of course, start with your present job and go backwards in time and talk about the other ones. If you can include dates, that's okay, but the month and the year for each of these jobs would be enough. After professional experience, you would continue with education, the same, the most recent to the oldest one. You would go back up to university. After some point, if you don't have a lot of experience, working experience, or you're very young, I mean, then just the university would be fine. But if your high school degree, for example, is very relevant to the position that you would apply to, then you would include that as well. For example, if you are going for an accounting position and you've graduated from an economic high school, the accounting class, and you do hold a degree for primary accounting, then that would be quite relevant for someone that would analyze your resume to understand whether you would be a good fit for this company or not. If you have an interest in accounting, if you've studied accounting, for how long have you studied accounting? Do you have the relevant knowledge or not? And if you show that you've started even in high school, or maybe you even went and graduated from an economic university or from an accounting faculty, then that would be very useful. Other than that, if it's not a specific case, then the high school is not really relevant, unless the high school is your highest degree, and then you would have to include it. But if your education didn't stop with high school and you went to university and you had a master's degree maybe, or two master degrees, then you would include, of course, the most recent one to the oldest one, but you do not need to include the grades. If anybody is interested in how well you did in university or how well you did in your master's degree, then they would ask for a diploma. But then you don't need to include that. You only have to specify the dates, and you have to specify the specialization, if there is one. Is there a profile, or is there just, let's say, economics, but then during the university you haven't really went through a specific profile, so therefore you wouldn't really include that. After you talk about your education, you would include any other types of certificates or diplomas, meaning that you went through different other type of specializations, and you have degrees or certificates for those. You would only include the ones that you can prove you've had, the ones where you have a certificate or a diploma or a degree for. You cannot include any ones that cannot be proven, because you might be asked to prove that. If you have any skills acquired in other types of classes, courses, seminars, workshops where you don't have a certificate for, not even an attending certificate for, then you would include those in your summary maybe as personal skills. Of course, you would have to mention the foreign languages that you speak. You have to know, and I think that you do, how important it is in our job market to speak a foreign language. So therefore, if you do speak a foreign language at an advanced level, you have to mention that. And for each of the languages that you provide, you have to also mention the level that you are at. I would, of course, suggest, as any other person, not to lie when you talk about foreign languages and not to include misleading information. For example, you would say that you speak German, but your level is pre-intermediate. So you say that you are upper intermediate or close to advanced. That wouldn't really be true, because generally at jobs interviews that also do tests, where German would be one of the criteria, you will be tested for your language skills. So I don't think you would want then to give information that would not be true, because then you would not pass. Of course, well, as an English teacher, I would, of course, advise you to study foreign languages. Foreign languages are one of the very good criteria that can definitely open doors for you. Other relevant information would mean driving license, if that would be relevant to your position, or any other certificates that are not specifically relevant to this position, but would show the type of person that you are. For example, vocational courses, or charity events, or if you volunteered for something, but be very, very brief. And you have to make a decision whether to include that or not. These other relevant information part can also miss from the resume, depending, of course, on the position that you are looking for. If you look for a position in computing, for example, volunteering for support for older people, for elderly, I don't think that's very relevant. So I don't think that would be of any interest to someone working in an IT domain and looking to hire for a specialist in computing. So you have to make a decision and see whether that would be true or not. But for example, if you're trying for a position in a non-governmental institution, volunteering would be a very good relevant information to include. Would actually come maybe a little bit higher in your resume than right at the end. So you would have to choose, in order to summarize a little bit what we've discussed today, you would have to choose the information that you want to include and then populate a predefined template. You can also create your own template. You can also create the document, okay, and draw lines and space out the information as you want. But there are sources and there are different resources now where you don't necessarily have to do that and work extra. And one last short discussion, different tips. You have to check very, very well your spelling. No grammar mistakes or no spelling mistakes whatsoever. If you read it once or twice or 3 times and then you have no idea, or you really think that everything is correct, have someone else that hasn't seen maybe your resume, who would come with clearer eyes and check your spelling. Check to see that there's no extra dot somewhere. Check to see that you haven't put extra spaces in between words. Check to see that your commas are in place or that they are not where they should not be. So punctuation is quite important as well. Be consistent throughout your resume with punctuation. So when you talk about your description, your job descriptions, for example, and you put bullet points or little hyphens or 1, 2, 3, although I wouldn't really say 1, 2, 3, then and at the end, don't put a comma. You can put a semicolon, for example, or don't put any punctuation at all, but you have to do that for all the jobs that you list in your resume. Don't use either a comma, either nothing, either a semicolon. That doesn't really work very well. So pay very close attention to punctuation and spelling of words. Then formatting means that you have to pay attention to the space between paragraphs, the space between words, the Word document, or even the predefined resumes would also use a little bit of formatting or allow you to do a little bit of formatting yourself to make sure that you don't have any extra spaces, because they will be visible to someone that has a trained eye or looking at resumes all day long. They will see if you do have a slightly not balanced information presented in your resume. One more important thing, your email. Your email should not be anything else but your name. So don't use any funny examples or any funny names or your pet's name or someone else's name or too many digits that have no connection to your name whatsoever. As much as you can, use your surname and your name, and that would be it, or your name and your surname, and that would be it. If that's not possible and you have to include digits, that's fine. We don't all have the possibility to use just our names, because sometimes that email address doesn't, you cannot use it, it's not available anymore. But never use words that are not part of your name. And one last thing, then the information that you have to provide is, I'll stop sharing. The information that you have to provide has to be professional. So keep it professional. No funny information, no amusing jokes, no words that would not be used in a professional context. You have to remember that this resume is your business card. You would send it to different institutions. You send it to professionals that would assess whether you are a fit in this for this position or in their company. So it's a big deal. Try as much as possible not to use phrasal verbs, not to use very informal language. Check out the lesson that we had on formal and informal language. Check out the video that we did on letter of intent. So you know a little bit on the type of language, a little bit more on the type of language that you would include. Try as much as possible to restrict your information to the most relevant ones, and you would be great then. So we'll be waiting for your comments, and we'll be waiting for your reactions. And if you think that this has been useful, and if you have any other ideas or any other wishes that you would like to talk about, please let us know. We would love to see whether you have any other desires or not, or if you have any confusions about anything, just let us know and we'll discuss about it. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time at our next class. Have a good day.